ask you, I mean, this is an annual event, it's a landmark summit. Do you have themes, or is there an ultimate goal with every summit, or is there a different goal? Or is each summit building up to the same goal? So I'm just
Well,
curious.
one of the goal is obviously um, to gather people that are spending some time on Viber. We have partners, we have celebrities here tonight, and we try to. So it's important for us to hear from them directly, uh, how they use Viber, well, how they see Viber in their life, in their own career. Because for us, those people, those celebrities, those partners creates content, creates localization of the app that user at the end appreciate, and we want to have a really intimate knowledge of the market where we invest our resources, because it's part of the difference of Viber to try to make things a little bit more local than any other app that tends to have a global strategy. It's not the way we see things. And, ideally, if we could have a different name and a different color in every country where we are, we would do it. I mean, it's honestly technically not possible, but I would love to do it.
Why not, right? Yeah, exactly.
Why not? Because Apple doesn't want to do it, or
Yeah.
Google doesn't try to do it. But we could do it, because we really think that there is no reason that a person from Sri Lanka use a messaging app the same way than a French or an American or a Russian, or I mean, there should be much more differences. Because of those two stores that are similar to the app, then we tend we all tend to build the same product for the world. I don't think is the right way to do it.
Just building on from that, as far as I know, I think Viber in Sri Lanka is used predominantly out of the urban areas, and so you're kind of, even within a country, you're kind of seeing it concentrated in certain markets, and also what we've seen is that there is outside of, say, Colombo, or I don't know if I'm wrong, but outside of Colombo, it is used quite heavily. And is there a reason for that you haven't actually penetrated into the more urban markets, or is that something you guys are actually happy about?
No, I mean, we're not happy about it. But it's I mean, we're a young company, and sometimes things happen, and we didn't know why exactly, and then we try then to understand later, to reanalyze later what happened in the past. A lot of people, for example, ask us, why do you have such a big penetration in Ukraine? Ukraine, 95% Ukrainian is Ukraine. It's not easy to understand sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes there was this kind of speed up in the usage and the adoption, and in the situation here, I mean, we're not completely sure about why it is like this. Probably we have some hypotheses. Maybe the cost of communication is more sensitive for people outside the big city and less for the big cities. And it's true that at the very early stage of those messaging and calling apps, the financial aspect was the key thing. It was about reducing the cost of telecommunication. Now it's not anymore. Now it's about the experience. Now it's about the fact that messaging apps in general, not only Viber, we offer a better experience than SMS in general. So people are using messaging app even if the cost of SMS is not that high now. But at the initial stage, it was very, very important. So maybe this population was more sensitive to the cost than it was, but that's an hypothesis.
Potentially the cost of the phone call as well, when you compare it against the international direct dialing rates at the time.
Yeah.
That was, and we have a fairly big migrant population, so that could potentially be a reason for that as well. Just to follow up on that, do you have plans to actually start promoting it in the more urban areas in Sri Lanka?
Obviously, yes, and then part of the plan is, for example, to partner with celebrities that are popular also in the big places, like Urani and what's the name of those Bhatia and Santushi, for example.
Oh, yeah.
All those guys that are creating content and a little bit more modern and fashion content that will attract also a younger, more fashion kind of population in the big areas. It's obviously one of our objectives, yes, and it's very funny because in other countries we have the exact contrary. You go to Philippines, it's the exact contrary situation.
Oh, I see.
Extremely popular in Manila, less popular in the remote
Okay.
areas.
It's a case by case situation.
Yeah, in every
Yeah.
country there are some situation like that, and we try to compensate. And sometimes it's not easy to understand why. Sometimes we do understand why, and part of it is it's a matter of circles of because the first thing you do with a messaging app is you message your friends, and then depending on how the country is structured, you may have a lot of people that are. The people in Philippines, for example, they live in a circle of Manila, and then most of their friends are in Manila, and that's where it is. So there are differences, but yes, it's part of our objective to try to re-increase our market share in the big cities, in Colombo specifically.
Yeah, just a quick question, like building on what you said, there's Sri Lanka has a small population, maybe 20 million odd, but we have more than 7 million downloads and subscribers for Viber in Sri Lanka. So
It's probably higher than
it's-
most of the other messaging apps. Right?
definitely, Viber
It's
beats
a third
out.
of the country.
Yeah, that's a third of the country. I mean, in your expert opinion, given that there are gaps in the urban sectors, maybe using Viber in Sri Lanka, but how is there such a high level of downloads and like 1/3 of the country is using Viber?
What do you mean how?
I mean, in your expert opinion, like if there's gaps, say in urban users in Sri Lanka, but there's still a high overall rate, 7 million subscribers out of a population of 20 million odd. How would you explain that success in Sri Lanka as a market?
As I said, I think the pricing issues were important at the beginning. That's one thing. The second thing is Sri Lanka is a country where a lot of people immigrate in other countries, and then a lot of families have sons, kids
I will assume, yeah.
far from their family, and then and Viber is we know that because we see, for example, in some countries like Australia, for example, we have a lot of calls from Australian users to Sri Lanka Viber users.
Probably Melbourne, yeah.
From Viber to Viber.
Sure.
And it's probably we don't look at the content of them, we don't know what they're talking about,
Yeah.
but we assume that it's people calling their families because we have a lot of the situation. So it's probably part of the reason why we have this. And imagine that kids calling their parents, kids messaging their family.
Also, I think the Middle Eastern labor force.
Yeah, as well. Yeah,
That-
we have a lot
That's a
of.
huge
That
factor,
is
yeah.
potentially where it actually started.
Yeah.
Was because they had a need to be constant. And I think if you look at the 7 million, it will be actually interesting to see kind of the heat map of where the downloads are in Sri Lanka.
Exactly, yeah. It's probably outside the urban
Yeah,
sectors
so
from
it'd
what.
be interesting to see, and if you can then correspond that to where people are going out of.
And in a urban sector, what is the app that we most use?
I would say it's WhatsApp.
What's that?
Is
WhatsApp and
Messenger.
Yeah, WhatsApp and Messenger, yeah, maybe FB Messenger. But then outside we still have that huge overall rate, which is like, which is kind of why I asked. And just a quick question with Rakuten Viber recently partnering up with Barcelona and Messi being a star player. Do you see yourself maybe in a South Asian market, maybe partnering up with cricket or maybe star players from sports that catch on in our markets? Is it
Yeah.
something you're looking into?
So we have done something with the Cricket World Cup, right?
Okay.
So sports is very important for us, and it's very important in general for Rakuten. Rakuten is investing a lot of money in sports, FCB, but also Golden State Warriors in the US.
Yeah.
Last weekend just ended the tennis tournament of Tokyo, Rakuten Tokyo tournament that Novak Djokovic won, and Rakuten also bought the rights of the Davis Cup.
Oh wow! Okay.
The new Davis Cup. So they own a baseball team. I mean, they own a football team as well. We do a lot, and at Viber we also do a lot in sports because sport is emotion that you share with your friends, you discuss with your friends about a topic. So we like to have partnership, and we have a lot of partnership around the globe in sports in general. Not only Sri Lanka, we have probably more than 30 football teams that are in partnership with, basketball teams in different countries. And for the South Asian region, I knew had this great idea to build a chatbot for the Cricket World Cup that happened in the UK. And about 1 million people played with the bot. It was a prediction bot
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
play with the friends. for no money. It was just the kind of thing that you do during a big competition. You bet with your friend you're going to win or lose, etc. And we implemented this solution. It has been a huge success. It was actually inspired from the Football World Cup that happened in 2018, that France won, if you remember, because I'm French.
Yeah, of course. With of course the same coach who won 20 years before as a player. Of course, I had it.
Exactly.
We have to mention that too because that hardly happens.
Thank you very much. So we did this bot initially for the Soccer World Cup. There's been a huge success as well, and we implemented the same structure for the Cricket World Cup. And the principle is that basically you can import in any chat the game you can play with your friends in a group chat of 6 people. For example, you play, you bet on the score, and every time you have the right score, you get some points, and there is a ranking, just for fun. There is no money involved. There is nothing involved. It's just for fun. It's been very successful, and we do also have some partnership with some sports champ or sports stars that creates communities to manage relationship with their fans. It can be the FCB that have a very popular community, like 3 million people following this community where they share content. But it can be also what's the name of this?
So we've also, for example, partnered. Just another example to add to this is like with the Bangladesh cricket team.
Okay.
So sometimes it's a bit complicated because the cricket board owns the rights. I mean, in Sri Lanka you'd understand that.
Yeah.
But we typically in Bangladesh we partnered with Unilever, which has the rights to the cricket team.
Okay.
So we did some sticker packs within the app,
Specialized for them. Okay.
with the cricketers themselves. So it's definitely an area of interest, and I mean, I know that cricket is big in Sri Lanka, of
my
course.
next question would be like, hopefully would be see Rakuten and Viber maybe sponsoring a team on a national level, be it India or Sri Lanka or Bangladesh, like you just mentioned.
So that was done in collaboration with Unilever.
With Unilever, yes, because they own the sporting rights.
Right.
So we obviously partnered, they had the rights, and we created something interesting.
So sometimes it's barter deals. There is no money involved. We just basically we help the sports or the club or the champ to promote himself or itself. So it's a channel for him, and it brings something to our users. Sometimes we sponsor the club. It depends on the situation. The sponsorship in general comes from Rakuten because there is a brand strategy at Rakuten, which is to build the Rakuten brand around the globe that justifies all those kind of investments. But why not? I mean, it's possible. 2 weeks ago, I saw Hiroshi Mikitani, the CEO of Rakuten, and he asked me a recommendation of sports that could help Viber that he could sponsor. It would be a win-win situation for Rakuten and for Viber, so we made some recommendation, and cricket was one of them.
Okay.
So who knows?
Hope to see you close to us soon.
They still don't understand the rules, but
We probably would be French.
But I believe like the first cricket was in the Olympics, though it was in France, though. Like, then it stopped, but yeah, I mean the first time cricket was played in the Olympics was in France, so there could be a French connection. Eh?
they could
Possibly, we bring it back.
I don't know any French that knows the rule of cricket. But,
Croquet maybe, not cricket. Though. And just from my side, I wanted to know, would Viber be compatible with AI and VR in the future? So that's coming in. Would you be able to integrate that somewhere in the future, or is that being thought about, or is it in the pipelines?
So when you say AI, I mean we use a lot of AI today.
Okay.
A lot of AI is behind the scene at Viber. For example, everything that we do to try to track spammers, scammers, fake news propagation, and this kind of stuff is done using AI. We try to all those topics are very difficult because it's very difficult to differentiate, for example, a commercial message, completely regular and real, from a spammer who is trying to sell shit to users.
Yeah.
Very difficult to decide what's fake news. I mean, you guys have been distributing news forever.
I mean,
some of them are fake, right?
Yeah, algorithms can only do so much, right? So.
Yeah, but what we can do is to try to understand when you distribute fake news, you don't do it on purpose. You do it because you had fake information and you distribute in good faith something, you don't know that. When somebody wants to harm some people, he has a certain pattern of behavior. So for example, he's a new guy in the system, he's not an installed brand, he's creating some profile to make it happen. He's trying to contact people he doesn't know. So all those patterns, AI can grab them can grab, for example, the user who will send to 3, 4, 5, 6 other people that are not in his contact list information that are maybe with a lot of images. For example, the format is also something we look at, and we can see that the users is pretty new in the system. All this AI will create pattern and will improve the pattern to better identify the users that could be risky users.
Sure.
And then we act based on this AI. We act this AI meaning that we can either monitor some users or you can ban some users, cut the content, delete the content, etc., etc. So it helps the human to make some decisions about the cleaning of our app. So AI is involved in our app. AI is involved in some search engines, for example. The search engine for stickers, for example, includes some AI. So it's involved, and it's going to be more and more involved because it's obviously the future. I mean, I'm sure that in the future, the way we, I imagine that if we'll look at some years ahead. I imagine that I'll be able to speak to my phone and you in French, and you will receive a written text in the language of your choice. And I also suppose that
real-time translation.
Today we have translation, but it's a manual translation. But we don't have voice recognition, for example. So maybe someday we will have voice recognition and real-time translation combined, and we'll make something nicer. And probably someday, all the assistants that we could imagine will be embedded into Viber. Probably someday we will have a discussion about a cricket game, and because we have invited a virtual assistant to our chat, he will propose us to buy two tickets for us automatically and this kind of thing. So I imagine there will be more and more AI in the future, and we are at the top of this topic. VR is another problem. VR is another subject. So far, we didn't see how VR could bring a better value for communication. VR create great experiences for content sharing. But I was in Barcelona this summer, and I went to the stadium and I checked the VR experience that they have in the stadium, in the Camp Nou, and it was not that exciting, very honestly, to have this kind of headset. And I was here with my kids, and I was looking at that and at this virtual game. Honestly, it wasn't that great. We're not that yet at the time where you and me will be you in Sri Lanka and me in San Francisco watching the same cricket game, sitting together virtually. We're not there yet. Might happen, but honestly, we're not there yet. So we have no specific plan for this in the very short term, but why not? I mean, Rakuten is investing massively in VR and AI, so we will benefit from those investments, of course.
In Sri Lanka, some of your competitors had a few problems with kind of insightful racist messages going around straight after the April bombings, etc.
Yeah.
So much so that then the government decided to ban Facebook and WhatsApp.
Yeah, there was
right?
a blanket ban social media.
But Viber was not blocked at that.
No, Viber was the same.
Was Viber
Same,
also
yeah.
blocked?
It was like a blanket
Yeah.
Do you kind of go into that area as well? Are you actively looking at stopping that kind of hatred messages and things?
Of course. That's what I was talking about with the usage of AI. It's very difficult because it's. I mean, at the scale of Viber, it's impossible to monitor all this manually. It's impossible. So we try to use AI to identify once more. Probably the guys who have created those kind of messages probably created specific profiles. So, so all this is the kind of patterns that I explained that could help us to put our eyes on it. Once we have our eyes on it, then we can look into the content when it's a public content, and it's this kind of content is general public because that's what they want. They want to hurt people, so they want to make it public. So we can have an eyes on it. Of course, we have the users themselves that report that kind of content, and as soon as we have reports, automatically we have other actions that come in, automatic and human actions, to try to monitor all this. And we have those situations where, I mean, I remember a month ago we shut down 2 communities that were some sort of ISIS-based kind of communities that have been created, and we shut it down immediately as soon as this one was very quick because they appeared apparently 24 hours before on Viber, and 24 hours later they were shut down because AI spotted some images and then human beings came in and sort of stuff. We cannot be sure 100% that we'll be able to track everything because it's a massive issue, it's a massive problem. We don't like when government makes those decisions to shut down social media or shut down internet, just like it happened recently in another country. But we can understand. We can understand. If things are out of control and if it creates so much tension that lives are at risk, I mean, it needs to be done. It has to be done, it has to be done. What we try to do is we try to cooperate with governments to try to improve this without going into the censorship which would impact freedom of expression because people want to speak, that's it. And sometimes the limit is not easy to find, but it's our role, we think, in a lot of countries to cooperate with government to find the best ways to fight this problem because it's a problem for everyone. We don't want to be a platform where all the hatred of the world will be gathered and shared. We want to be a good experience for users, and it's for all our users.